The Bourbon dynasty governed France for decades. King Louis XIV defined this era of control with 4 words: "I am the state." The regime operated on the divine right theory, meaning the king's authority originated with God. This positioned the monarch beyond the reach of his subjects, answering only to a higher power. Formal political channels had effectively seized up. The Estates General, France's only representative parliament, had not been summoned for over a century. It had not been convened since the year 1614. This ideology of divine isolation created a barrier between the palace and the people. The monarchy functioned in a vacuum, remaining detached from the mounting failures within the nation's borders. Financial stability eroded under Louis XV, whose series of continuous wars and personal extravagance drained the treasury and increased the debt. His successor, Louis XVI, remained passive toward the mechanics of governance. Outside the palace, Queen Marie Antoinette's visible spending further agitated a public struggling with economic misery. The population was categorized into a rigid hierarchy of 3 estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the commons. This medieval structure proved incompatible with the requirements of the 18th century world. In 1749, the Crown introduced the vingtième, a tax on 5% of all income. However, the first 2 estates maintained exemptions by providing the king with occasional gifts, shifting the tax burden completely away from the upper classes. The social system functioned as a mechanism to extract wealth from the lowest class, while insulating the elite from the state's rising financial debt. The third estate, or the commons, represented the vast majority of the population. Despite their numbers, they held a fraction of the wealth and shouldered its entire tax burden. This caricature illustrates the economic weight on the common laborer. The church collected the tithe, taking 1/10 of peasants' produce. The nobility enforced the banalité, taxing the use of mills. Beyond this, the state demanded the corvée, forced labor for roads. These extractions were not random hardships. They were the legal tools used to engineer a state of permanent poverty for the commons. By the late 1700s, progress in trade and the industrial sector began to transform the French economy, creating new centers of wealth in the cities. This growth produced a new demographic within the Third Estate, a prosperous middle class of doctors, lawyers, bankers, and industrialists. A disconnect emerged between economic power and social status. While the middle class generated wealth, their legal rights remained fixed. This gap became a source of deep discontentment. Despite professional success, they paid feudal taxes and were barred from higher positions. This created a critical mass of blocked mobility. France now possessed a highly capable and ambitious class that the existing system refused to accommodate. Bourgeois professionals, trained in law and finance, found that the divine right system left no room for peaceful reform. Their education provided the means to lead, but the law offered no path to power. They lacked the physical force to challenge the king's armies alone. To alter the state, they needed to leverage a far larger demographic. They found that force in the urban masses and rural peasants, whose long-term resentment toward the tithe and the corvée had reached a breaking point. Middle-class leaders translated their own political goals into the language of the masses: liberty, equality, and fraternity. By focusing the raw anger of the hungry against the institutions of feudalism, they aligned bourgeois strategy with peasant survival. The revolution functioned as a tactical partnership, middle-class ambition providing the organization, and the peasantry providing the numbers to overwhelm the existing order. This dynamic was central to the analysis of historians Will and Ariel Durant, who studied the middle class during the transition away from monarchy. The Durants argued that the essence of the French Revolution was the overthrow of the nobility and the clergy by a rising bourgeoisie. In this view, the middle class utilized the discontent of the peasants to dismantle feudalism and the energy of the urban masses to neutralize the king's military power. Obsolete political systems collapse when they block the advancement of their most capable citizens, turning the very people needed to manage the state into the architects of its ruin.